everybody, it's Allison from CraftyisCool.com. I'm excited to be here today with you to show you something cool and crafty. I made something, I crocheted something super cute that you're just gonna wanna make yourself. I made this heart crossbody bag, and it's made in this teddy textured yarn. It's soft and fluffy and it's fuzzy. And if you've been shopping, if you've been to the mall, if people go to the mall, if you've been to the mall, if you've been shopping online, if you've been to Target or Walmart or wherever, you've seen this teddy trend. Everything is teddy textured. It looks like stuffed animals everywhere, like coats. I bought a coat online, Walmart. Bags, jackets, I've seen it on shoes. I mean, it's everywhere. So it's fun. And I wear that coat and I look like I stepped out of Build-A-Bear. That's what my kids said. So, but I decided to make a bag out of it because I found this yarn. I saw this yarn, they have it in so many different colors. I'm gonna drop you a link below to find this yarn. I lined it in fabric and I got this strap on Amazon, easy, and these D-rings, Joanne stores, Joanne. I always called it Joann's, but it's not, it's Joanne. And so I'm gonna show you how to work with that yarn. You have to do it all by feel. I'm gonna show you how to work with it though, because it can be done. It's actually, once you start feeling it, you'll love it. And then I'm gonna show you how to line it. I'm gonna show you how to put the hardware, the strap on, and then we'll be done and you'll be so stylish. Okay, so let's get started. First, let's talk about the materials you're going to need. In the description box below, I have listed all of the products I used. I found this furry red yarn on hobby.com. That's Hobbii. It's really soft and it's actually a little finer gauge than it looks. It's really similar to Burlap Pipsqueak if you've ever worked with that. Okay, and so for this project, I used an H hook. You can use either a J or H hook or whatever hook you'd prefer. There isn't a set gauge for this project, so if you're making it out of worsted weight yarn even, you can go down to a G. I found this adjustable strap on Amazon, and it comes in dozens of different designs and colors and different colors of hardware, so there's going to be a lot to choose from. As long as it has these two hooks, it should work for this project. Also not pictured are two D-rings. And those can be any size you want. I got them to match the hardware. They're gold. I don't think that I had them at the time that I filmed this, but that's another thing you'll need. And you'll need a good pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and about a 1/4 yard of fabric to line the bag. Okay, so let's get started with a magic ring. You're going to make a loop, pull the yarn through the loop, chain 2, and you're going to start doing half double crochets into this ring. I'm going to work 6 half double crochets for the first round. And this is going to be the very bottom of the heart. So that's your second, and this is 3 and 4, 5, and this will be the last stitch. That is number 6. Now you're going to pull the tail that you started with to close that loop. So this is where it gets interesting working with a yarn like this. You will not be able to see those little V's that you're used to looking at on the top of your work. You won't see those unless you have really good vision. So I always use a stitch marker when I'm working with anything that conceals the stitches. It makes it to where you can keep track, you can count each round as you go. I typically don't even use a stitch marker, but in this case, it's pretty much a must. So starting from there, you're going to work 2 stitches into each previous stitch. And you're going to find that by feeling, you can't see it, you're going to feel, you can feel the posts of each stitch, and you're going to work in between those. So you're going to work 2 into that first one. And keep going, working 2 stitches into each of those little spaces. You can feel them. And you might not be working into the stitch, you might be working into the space, but really that's not going to matter too much when you're working with this kind of yarn. It's just, you'll see, it's just all concealed. When you work around the first round, you should be counting to 12. So by the time you get back to that first stitch marker, make sure you have 12 stitches by then. And if you need to fudge it a little bit and put, 3 stitches in that last one, that's okay. It really is, because it's all going to even out. It's forgiving, very forgiving. So move your stitch marker up to the loop on your hook and keep going. And you're going to do that for every round so that you will be able to keep track. Now for this next round, keep working just like that and watch your hook. You're going to work 18 stitches. So you're going to work 2 stitches into the first one and a half double crochet into the next one, and keep that pattern. 2 half double crochets, 1 half double crochets. I'm going to show you the entire round for these first couple of ones because I want you to get an idea of what it looks like to crochet with this yarn. It really is all by feel. I am not seeing the stitches, and I'm sure you aren't either. As I go, I can tell that it's growing, but you really cannot see each individual stitch. But with my thumbs, with my fingers, I can feel those stitches. And it's thin. I mean, it looks really bulky, but the yarn itself, it's a very fine strand, and you can feel it. And see, I'm feeling for that last stitch. Okay, so right there, I should have counted to 18 when I get right up to that next. And if you're not at 18, you can rip it out and go back and count to 18 again, or you can just add an extra stitch right there. And if you have too many, just don't add one on the next round. Okay, now we're going to start making the heart. It's going to kind of go up into a triangular shape. And for this round, I'm only going to increase by 3. So we're going to do 21 stitches. So I placed my stitch marker, and I'm going to count to 21. So that means for every 7 stitches, or every 6 stitches, I'm going to increase by 1. So I'm going to do, I usually count in my head, 1, 2, that's my increase. And then I count 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'll count in my head. 8, 9, that's my increase. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. As I'm doing each stitch. I hope that makes sense because it's really all just math, and it really helps me just to count as I'm going. And so here I'm going to be finishing that 3rd round or 4th round, and it should be 21 stitches. And if I get to 21 and I'm right up against that stitch marker, then I know that I've gotten 21 stitches. I don't have to go back and count them because that would be really difficult. I just know that I've gotten 21 stitches in that round. So that should be 21 right there. Okay, and then move that stitch marker. You have to use a stitch marker. I don't know what this would look like if I didn't use a stitch marker, because half the rounds I have to fudge a little bit if I miss a stitch or anything. So okay, so now we're going to increase by 2 again. And this round is going to be 24 stitches. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm counting like by 8s. 8 times 3 is 24, so I'm going to count in sets of 8. And I'm going to put that increase somewhere in that group of 8. So that's how I get from 21 to 24. In this pattern, you're going to see a pattern in the increases. I am increasing by 3 and 3 and 6. 3, 3, 6, all the way up the heart. It gives it kind of a wider cone shape, and that's just the way I found it to give it the right shape I need. I made several before I got this shape. So at the end of this round, I'm going to fast forward and we're going to see what it looks like after I've completed several rounds. So this is my last round before I'm going to start making the purse opening. There's a little slot in the back of the purse and it's simple to make. We're just going to skip a bunch of stitches and make that wide opening. So this, my last round is going to be 84 stitches. And in my head, like before, I'm counting to myself 84. The round before this was 78, so I had increased by 6. And so I'm going to be counting those out. My last stitch right before the stitch marker, and then I will move the stitch marker onto the loop on my hook. That gives me a chance to take out the hook and lay it out flat and see if I like the shape. So it's kind of a wide heart, and that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be a big cartoonish looking heart. So in this round, I'm going to start the opening for the purse. I'm going to crochet 14 half double crochets from that stitch marker that marks the beginning of the round. I'm going to go 14 stitches, and then for the opening, I'm going to make that 14 stitches wide also. So to mark the beginning of the opening, I've put in a stitch marker, and this is where you're going to use your fingers to count stitches. I am feeling along trying to find 14 stitches. Now I chain 14. So I've sped this up a lot, and you're going to see that I come to the end of the round and I'm just crocheting into each stitch. There's nothing else in this round that is of note. So we're going to end up right back at the stitch marker, and in my head I am counting 84, including those chains. That just helps me know that I've got the right number of stitches in this weird yarn. When I'm trying to work with this, I just have to keep counting. I'm starting the next round, and this is the round where I'm going to work into those chain stitches to continue creating the top of the heart. So I'm pretty much just working 84 half double crochets all the way around again, except this time I have to work into those chains. And it is a little tricky because they're just these floating chains up above my work, and I have to count. So when I start working on those chains, I am going to make sure I am counting 14 stitches. So as you can see, I'm not even worrying about if I'm crocheting into the top of the stitch, back of the stitch, whatever. I'm just working into that chain. You do what you can on this with this yarn. So you're going to crochet wherever you feel that little chain, and you should feel it. It's going to be a little loop under there, and you just crochet into it. You're crocheting half double crochets, and just make sure you're counting to 14. And when you get to 14, you should be at the next stitch marker. So it's a long process. You just work your way across, feeling, putting your stitch in, Pulling up a loop, yarn over, feel, put your hook in, and you just go all the way across. You can't rush this part. And there should be 14. So now we're going to continue crocheting all the way around. And again, the total is going to be 84 stitches. You're just working evenly all the way around. At this point, I have completed 3 more rows after that first row of the top of the bag. And I am ready to actually split the top to make the heart. Now at this point, we're going to ignore the stitch counts, and I'm going to find the actual center of the bag. So I can remove those stitch markers from the pocket, and I'm going to find the center, and I want to start working based on that. So after I find that, I can start counting backwards to find where I'm going to start, where I'm going to end, how many stitches I need to skip, because we're going to start branching. That means that we will make the top separate and divide into 2 separate pieces. If you've used my patterns before, you know that this is what I do for the legs of my dolls. And so we're going to split it. So right now I'm counting. There's 84 stitches, so I want each top of the heart to be 42 stitches around. So when I find the center of the heart, I need to mark it and count 42 stitches around. So that will be that left half of the heart. I do this all by feel. There's no trick besides just getting your fingers in there and feeling where the yarn is. You can feel the post of each yarn. That's why I use half double crochet instead of single crochet. It's quicker, but it also gives you something to feel in that fabric. You can feel the posts of each stitch. It would probably be even easier if you were using double crochet because it has a taller post. But in this case, you can feel the stitches because there is a little opening in there. After I've found 42 stitches, I put in another stitch marker. Now that should be split in half. There should be 42 stitches on each side to make the heart. And now no matter where that stitch marker is, because it's not going to be perfectly on this side, since this was worked in a spiral, you're going to start crocheting. And this is when I make my pattern notes. Depending on your gauge, I crocheted 25 stitches from that stitch marker to get to that second stitch marker. So I'm going to crochet 25 half double crochets, and that will take me to that first stitch marker. Now if you marked the center of your heart and it was not 25 stitches away, that doesn't matter. You're going to use a perfect round of 42 stitches. So when you get to that stitch marker, keep going across and you will get to 42. So now it's time to crochet across the center of the heart into that stitch marker to complete our first round of 42 stitches. So right into that stitch marker, that stitch, I'm going to crochet my next stitch. And this is going to form a continuous round. And then I can remove the stitch marker and continue going. So So just like before, you're going to remove the stitch marker, move it to the loop on your hook, and continue going around. I worked 2 even rounds after this of 42 stitches. Now we are at the last round of the top of the heart. I worked this round in single crochets. I'm single crocheting together all the way around, so I'm going to end up with 6 stitches, and that is it. So I worked a slip stitch into the last stitch and cut the tail and pulled it tight, and now you have the finished top of that side. For the second side, it's real simple because you just repeat that. Let's see where the opening is. It looks right in the middle, so that's where I wanted it. Now for the second side, we're going to start with a slip stitch on your hook, and I worked a half double crochet into this unworked stitch, which you can find by just feeling. There should be an open loop right there. I yarned over, inserted the hook, and then I pulled it through to make a half double crochet. And this side is worked identically to the first side. You go all the way around 42 stitches, and you just repeat what you did on the first side. So it's done. I did both parts of the heart, the top of the heart, and it looks exactly how I want it to look. The shape is good. There's yarn tails to weave in, and then at the top of the heart you're going to see that big opening. So I'm going to use a strand of the yarn to close that up. All you do is use either the yarn tail or an extra strand of that yarn and that yarn needle, and we're gonna just sew over that opening, and it's really easy. You just make sure it's secure. Just cross back and forth. Use a yarn needle to close up the rounds at the top of each side of the heart. Just thread a yarn needle with that tail of yarn and weave it through the last round. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to secure it closed. So if, again, you can't really see the stitches, but if you feel around, there's an opening and you want that to be closed. Now it's time to add lining. So I'm going to take some fabric, lay the heart out on it, and make sure it is wide enough. I want to sew the right sides together, so I'm going to flip that out. And you can iron your fabric if you need to. Mine did not need ironing. So I just smoothed it out, laid my heart on top, and then a real simple process to get the right shape and size is just to trace around the heart with just a pen. You can use a disappearing ink pen if you want, but mine was sufficient. I just used a black ink pen. Now you're going to start cutting out the heart all the way around, and then a good rule of thumb to make sure it's symmetrical, fold it in half and trim any excess because you want that to be pretty even. Now I took it to my sewing machine. If you'd like, you can of course sew it by hand. I just like to use my machine. And I just did a straight stitch with, I don't know what the seam allowance is, probably a ½ inch seam allowance all the way around. And you should probably use matching thread. I think this was gray thread. so it just doesn't show. I use gray thread for a lot because it just doesn't show up. But I went all the way around the edge, and actually I sewed the entire thing closed, which is what you might not expect, but you'll see in a moment we will get that open. So I sewed all the way around the edge. You don't have to leave an opening for turning. You just sew the entire thing shut because you're going to cut a hole for the pocket. So as you can see, it fits the shape of the heart really well. It's a little bit larger, but that doesn't matter. We're going to stuff this inside the pocket of the heart. And when you look inside the heart, you will be able to see the inside of the fabric once we cut the pocket. So make sure it's lined up in there really well. We're going to map out where we want the pocket. So all of the edges need to align inside with the edges of your bag. And then to find the spot where we want the pocket, smooth everything out. Make sure it's exactly how you want it, because this is your last shot to get your fabric lining lined up correctly. So take that same pin and mark where your pocket is. I just drew all the way across just so I could make sure it was wide enough. And this, you'll see, it's probably not going to come out exactly where I want it, but it gives me an idea of where it should be positioned. So now take out the lining and lay it out, and you'll be able to mark a more precise line of where you want that pocket to be. I at least know the height and kind of the width of how I want the pocket. So I used a quilting ruler, and this is a good tool because you can see everything through it. And I marked the center of the pocket where it should be. I'm not really measuring with this, but I'm just making sure I have straight lines. So I mark the left side of the pocket, and then I can draw a straight line from the left to the center, and I can mark where the right side of the pocket should be just based on that little marking that I made when the lining was inside of the bag. And then I can actually draw a straight line for the pocket. This might not be how a professional bag maker that does this often would do this, but this is just what I found works for me. So if you have a better method, then by all means, feel free to use that method to make a pocket, but this is what worked for me, and it actually turned out really well. So, and it was simple. It was a simple way to do it. So I feel like this worked for me. So I'm gonna snip open where the pocket should go. It's hard not to cut through both layers, but I just had to be really careful just to start it. I don't have to cut the whole thing like this, but I just wanted to start the pocket. So I snipped an opening, and then I was able to cut through just the top layer, of course, and cut across the length of the pocket. So I'm going to snip the pocket just a little bit wider so I can turn up the top and the bottom for a seam. And I'm using this Fabri-Tac glue. It holds really well, and I'm going to press those little seams into place. That's so I don't have a raw edge on the inside of my pocket. And it holds really well, and it's supposed to be washable. I have not ever washed with it, but I'm going to repeat that on the bottom side of the pocket. And then when I insert it into the bag, I'm actually going to sew that into place, so we'll have double protection. So now I've put the lining into the bag and lined up the pocket, and I'm going to use red thread and a sewing needle to stitch by hand all the way around that opening. If you're really good on your machine and you feel comfortable sewing this on your machine, you can go ahead and do that, but I went ahead and used my just sewing by hand because it just seemed a little easier to me. You want to go through both layers of fabric and the yarn. So it's a little thick, but you sew all the way around, just a straight stitch, doesn't have to be perfect. And then you're going to knot the end and your bag is pretty much done. That's it. Now, if you have a gaping opening, I did this bag out of worsted weight yarn, and I actually made the opening a little larger since the bag was a little smaller. And I wasn't able to make it lay flat. As you can see, it gaped open. So all I did was I added a button closure. I attached the yarn at the top and chained, I think I chained 5 to make a little button loop, and I sewed a button onto the bottom. This one lays flat, so I did not do that. Now we're going to sew on the D-rings so that we can make the purse wearable. I got these D-rings at Joann's stores. They have a line of purse making supplies, but they are available on Amazon. They're available at other stores, Michael's and any craft store. Probably a hardware store too, I don't know. I marked where I wanted to put the rings, and this is actually where they seemed to balance the best. I tried it just hooking the purse strap into the purse, and I tried it on, and some parts it made the purse floppy and it folded in on itself, but these seem to be the sweet spot. It's right at the side of the heart, but above the opening. So that's where you should probably put your D-rings. I used a strand of matching yarn and a yarn needle, and I attached the D-rings just by sewing over and over and over around the base of the D-ring. Now I've finished putting on both D-rings. They line up perfectly. That's how I wanted it. And I can go ahead and clip on the strap. And it is done. Here she is. So cute, so fashionable, so hip. For me, anyway, I don't know. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you make it, please tag me and wait if you post it. And I would love to hope that you were able to make something cute, or you're going to make something cute. Be sure to follow me at CraftyisCool on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's all the same, CraftyisCool, all one word. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please hit subscribe, and you can click that little bell, and then you'll know when I post something. I hope y'all have an amazing day, and stay crafty and cool. Bye.